Welcome to Connecting the Dots, a non-traditional legal program with your host and trusted advisor, Liz Myska, your guide through the web of life's dilemmas.
Welcome to another edition of Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Liz Myska, and today I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming a new friend who is an old hand. Welcome, Ed Bemis.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me.
So, and actually now I'm going to make another play on words. Bemis Nurseries. The first time that I even heard of you or heard of Bemis Nurseries was on a Zoom call a couple months ago in the downtown Business Improvement District. Monthly, I will call it Coffee Clatch. And you were very robust and energetic, and you dazzled, at least you dazzled me, with your plant knowledge. So dazzle me again, Ed.
Well, our involvement in the Downtown Business Improvement District started, well, the planning for it started a long time ago, but the actual physical involvement started last year. We did the planters and hanging baskets for the Downtown Business Improvement District. And it was a new experience for us. We'd done the Spencer planters. We just volunteer and donate the materials and so on. And Worcester was a different setup, different kinds of containers, a lot of things. And the big challenge was going to be watering. We knew we could grow the plants. We knew we could get the plants in place. And we knew we'd find a way to be able to water them consistently. But it takes a little bit of effort. It's about 1,800 gallons of water every 3 days. So it was a fun experience, a learning experience. So year two has been far easier than year one in a lot of ways. Different challenges, always challenges, but.
I'm just going to comment that I was only up close and personal with the planter, which I think there's one at the corner of Pleasant and Main.
Yes.
A couple weeks ago, but I had heard tell of them. People would be drooling over them and saying, "Oh my gosh, they're beautiful and they're cascading and the colors are so vibrant." And I know when you and I actually met in person, when we were doing a walkabout and having blindfolded people, I was asking you about the contents of the, what kind of plants you put in there. So now I'm fascinated about, how you figured out how to water them, but also were there themes that you wanted to bring forth? In other words, these plants are going to last a long time, and they're going to blossom, when they're going to be prolific. Describe that process.
That's always a challenge. First off, my wife, I have to give credit where credit is very much due. My wife generally is the one who does all of the planning in terms of variety selection and so on. She's so much better at that than I am. But what our goal was to have something that would be definitely showy throughout the day and throughout the night. Okay. Last year we had gone with some kind of red, white, and blue things, but the blue was a dark blue. And it looked great during the day, but by the time night hit with the decreased light levels, the blue kind of faded off into nothingness. And so this year we said we'd really like to do something that was a little bit brighter, yellows and light pinks and so on. And we think we've hit that. One of the things that you mentioned, the word you used was cascading. Yes. And cascading is so important to us because you can have a pot that has a plant growing in it, and it's beautiful. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But when you can add the element of cascading so that the flowers and foliage are hanging down the sides of the pot, the visual impact of that one container is so much larger than when it simply is just growing out of the top. So the hanging baskets, I was just taking some pictures of some of the hanging baskets on my way into the studio. And they're down so that most of the plants are down to the bottom of the pot, at least on most of the pots. And then some of the black-eyed Susan vine is, not black-eyed Susan vine, I'm sorry. The one that was named will come to me in a second. is cascading down even a few feet below that. So it's just kind of fun. It brings people into it. It softens an urban area. I have to say, as a little bit of an aside, I've been very excited about the wonderful things that are happening in downtown Worcester. I hadn't spent a lot of time in downtown Worcester before this, but I have since this, and I've been really, really impressed at how nice and neat and clean it is, how friendly everybody is, how safe it is. Safe, really, yes. you kind of have this vision in your head of an urban area
yes,
at
right.
night.
People skulking around.
Yeah, it's not at all. It's safe.
Right.
So I was very excited about being involved in that whole thing. Not that I made it safer.
Right.
That we were part of making it pretty and making it enjoyable for people to be in.
Absolutely. So you have a wealth of experience. So tell us a little bit about how you came to horticulture, and,
okay.
and again how the city of Worcester found you, I guess.
Okay. A wealth of experience, I guess, is another way of saying I'm getting really old. Which I am, but I don't mind that at all.
Not Methuselah.
I accept my age and go on. My dad started our farm, our nursery, 75 years ago,
oh my
in 1947.
Wow.
And my grandfather, it was on a farm that my grandfather had started in 1918. So
wow.
the family goes back and even in town before that. But so my father was the horticulture person. My grandfather liked dairy and orchards, but my father wanted to go a different direction, and so he wanted to go into ornamental plant gardening, landscaping, and so on. At that point, it was a little bit unusual
yes.
to see, because there were some planting. The big estates certainly had it, but
right.
Homeowners weren't.
Not the average.
They might have some cottage gardens, but it wasn't something that there was big expanses of flowers on most houses. And so it was. I'm sure that it was a challenge for him starting out, developing the market, so to speak. Anyway, I came onto the scene, and I grew up in the business. I was never pressured at all to be in the business. I just enjoyed it. And I went to Stockbridge School at UMass, and then went to Cornell Floriculture and Ornamental Horticulture. Met my wife there. We were friends long before we were a couple. And she was also in horticulture. She had transferred from Delaware. She lived in Pennsylvania, but went to the University of Delaware. And we ended up getting married, and so she brought more of the greenhouse aspect, because that was her true love, annuals and perennials. Mine was woody plants, trees, and shrubs. And we've kind of melded. It's been kind of interesting over our 35 years of marriage to see how I've come to appreciate some of hers, and she's come to appreciate some of mine.
So a couple things that when you said 1918. That was, I think, the end of World War I, and then you said 1947, a couple years after World War II. And so I'm thinking, I think people's lives then were in upheaval after both of those events, World War I and World War II. And so to put down roots, literally put down roots and start anew or start afresh, that's just what leaps to my mind.
It must have been incredibly difficult. Yeah. I think about my grandfather, he went to UMass also, and then started the farm, so he was probably 20 when he did it. And it's called Bemis Farms because the convention in farm naming is that if a farm is made up of two farms, so if you bought two farms and made it one, then it's farms. So it's Bemis Farms, and it was part of several different farms that he bought and put together as a package. It was 360 acres maybe altogether. Wow. And I think about me having been 20, would I have had the guts to do that? Right. Particularly in that era,
right?
After the war and things are in turmoil.
Right.
That really took some guts, as far as I can see. And the same for my dad in a different way. Right. He started, and then he had been growing the business, and then he went to Korea, for the Korean War and then Korean conflict, and then came back and continued. And we sometimes in today's world think that we have it kind of rough, but I can't imagine in either of those cases being much rougher.
Well, my dad was a World War II vet and a Korean War vet as well. So I'm of the same era as you. Not as old as you, of course, but I'm of the same era. But imagining what it was like to have your world turned upside down, to go to war and then come back and see the landscape, see this landscape, and think about where you were and what's important to you.
Yes.
So now we're going to fast forward to to now. I mean, because now you obviously you and your wife have the business.
Yes.
So how have you altered or extrapolated or gone off on a new tangent?
Well, interestingly, when my dad started the nursery, he started with perennials. So flowering plants that will die back to the ground each winter come back next year.
Okay, thank you.
And the wording annual and perennial is confusing, so I try to make sure that
thank you.
I'm speaking so that everybody understands. And he started with perennials, and he kind of migrated into woody plants, and then he became known for his woody plant design and growing and so on, and that kind of became who he was, even though his roots, so to speak, were in perennials. And and my true love was trees and shrubs, and Tina's true love was annuals and perennials, and she was a greenhouse production person. And so she ended up opening her own greenhouse on the farm that was separate from the nursery. We would buy from her, but she had other wholesale customers, particularly in Metro Boston area as well. And over time, it just got more and more difficult to keep the two businesses separated. And at one point, we kind of just said, okay, yeah, we're going to be one. And when we were in college, she jokingly said that I was a person who liked the stubborn plants, the woody plants, the trees and shrubs. And I said that she liked the wimpy plants because they were soft-stemmed and so on. But we really have come to appreciate each other's area.
Yeah,
and the desire for plants in Central Mass anyway, and much of the other parts of the country too, has shifted from being very, very tree and shrub oriented to being very perennial and annual oriented. So we have shifted because we had the ability to grow more annuals and perennials right on the farm. And, shipping them was easy because we put them on a cart, we bring them down the hill. And so we've made a shift to very heavily into annuals and perennials, and coupled with that, we've moved into giving a lot of workshops with the annuals and perennials where people, they make a project and they take it home, and it's just a really fun happening for them and for us.
Yeah. So describe that a little bit more. I mean, when did you start doing that? When did you realize that, hey, there's a market for this? People are interested in this, because I would imagine that a lot of people come and they're like, I could do this in my yard, or I could do this, on my balcony.
Well, it was probably about 20 years ago. And Tina had, there's a saying amongst husbands and wives that the wife is always right and it just takes the husband a while to admit it. Well, this is one of those cases. When 20 years ago, she decided that she wanted to have some workshops on making wreaths, because she had figured a way to make wreaths that was, she always says that she's the worst wreath maker.
Okay.
And she had the hardest time grasping the way we did it, and she did it a different way, and she said, if I can do it that way, I can teach other people to do it, because nobody's worse than I am. And so we had, I think that first year, maybe 6 different workshops at Christmas in one of our old little greenhouses. It was not royal by any chance, by any definition of the word. And it just kind of, and I thought, that's really quaint. I don't know how long this is going to last.
Right. But I'll indulge her.
But and 20 years later, we're doing 500 workshops a year. So clearly, I was on the wrong side of that one. But it allows people to come and express their creativity
Right.
in a safe environment. If you go to the store and you buy some stuff and you make it at home, you're not necessarily confident that what you made looks good or that somebody else is going to like it. You know, as humans, we're human adults, we're pretty insecure in many ways, and that's one of the ways. And so in a controlled environment where it's safe for you to spread your creative wings and let out some of that creativity that's been hiding inside since, you know, 3rd or 4th or 5th grade, people can find out that they really do enjoy making the project. They're wide-ranging projects. They're horticulturally oriented, but, you know, porch pots or hanging baskets or wreaths or winter pots. It kind of runs the gamut depending on what the season is. But our favorite words are, when people are leaving and they're holding their project,
Right.
they're saying, I can't believe I made it myself.
I did it, right. I did it.
can't believe I made it myself. And it's just so rewarding
Yeah, heartwarming.
to see that happen. We get, frequently, there's somebody who wants to go to the workshop and she brings her friend along. And the friend says, you know, well, I went to your thing. I've got to go to your thing. I don't necessarily. I'm not a plant person. I don't really want to go, but I'm going to smile and I'm going to
Grin and bear it.
grin and bear it. And so, quite frequently, the friend's project comes out even nicer than the bringer's project. And the friend, you know, says, I didn't think I was really going to enjoy this, but I had a ball, and you know, I can't believe I made it myself. So it's really nice to see that transformation happen, that release of creativity.
How many people can you accommodate in a workshop, or does it depend on what it is?
It depends partly on what it is and when it is.
Okay.
What our general goal, now that the COVID caseload is down than from what it was, our general goal is 20 people, and it's in a greenhouse, so it's open air pretty much, outside during the appropriate times of the year. Mm-hmm. There are times where we will have more than that. It kind of depends on how easy or complicated the project is and how much space it takes up.
Right.
Sometimes we'll have two versions of the same, two sessions of the same class going on at the same time. So one instructor will be doing 20 people in that section of the greenhouse, a different instructor will be doing 20 in the other section of the greenhouse. But generally speaking, it's in that 18 to 20 person range.
Okay. During COVID, did you go virtual or not?
We did grab and go workshops for a while.
Okay.
Where we put together a kit for people. We did a handout or a video on how to make it and put it together, and they would come and they'd get their kits outside the greenhouse, and then they'd bring them home. And then we kind of went to, I think our limit was maybe 6, I don't remember for sure, but I think it was 6 people per workshop, and then we also did grab and goes. And the grab and goes are much more challenging for us to put together all the kits ahead of time. And so we've shifted into just doing in-person ones now.
Right.
But Tina also does a lot of senior centers, and when they were doing the grab and goes for the senior centers would take, you know, twice as many grab and goes, because that was easy for some of the seniors. They could just go get the kit at the senior center or send somebody to get the kit, and then they could do it at home. They didn't have to actually go there for the class themselves.
Did you find that the social aspect, though, I mean, what you were saying about the bringer and the guest, I think so often when there's the social aspect, because people are like, oh, I don't want to go because I don't want anybody looking at what I'm doing, and then they find out they're not looking at you. They're consumed in their project. So
everybody has a ball. I think a workshop is a success when I hear a lot of noise from people talking and making new friends.
Right.
You know, whether you came alone or whether you came with your family or whether you came with whoever, the other people who are working around you, by the time you leave, you're friends with them. And it's really, really nice to see that, particularly in today's world, where people tend to be a little bit more cautious and reserved in many ways.
Right.
But just to be able to let loose and make some new friends.
Well, you're making me think that last December, I had mentioned that I'm a trustee at Tower Hill Botanic Garden, now the New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill. But a group of our VIPs, visually impaired people, and volunteers for night lights, which is when they illuminate the garden, we were given a room in the Southeast Link, which is a portion of the Tower Hill campus, and we made swags because one of our volunteers owned a garden, a garden complex. And just what you're saying, Ed, the people, and so these are blind people, and the greens were already like wired together, so we didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
The ornaments that we were using were Christmas ornaments, but they were put on pipe cleaners. So all we had to do was twist, but we got to pick the ornaments that we wanted. So like there were little drums and little horns, and the bows were pre-made. We got to pick the bows, and our sighted volunteers would describe, this bow has gold, or, this has, like braiding or whatever. And it was so thrilling for people to leave with something that like, I made this,
Absolutely, absolutely. It creates a memory.
It absolutely.
And whether you can see the bow or whether you can feel the bow,
right.
You can feel the bow and say, oh, I remember that was kind of a gold bow. And the tails were really long, and we made this here, and I was talking with whoever.
Exactly.
And all of those things come back together, and the scent of natural evergreens, and all of that really creates a wonderful thing.
Well, and again, you're doing a project, you're making something, but you're also making a memory, as you point out, that you'll never forget that. I mean, ultimately that green thing will end up in the trash, but that's, again, I think that's brilliant in human interaction, because that's what I observe happening when I bring people into a space and they're automatically, like you said, they're insecure. They're saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. And they want to pass. But then when it's not that we don't give them a pass, they're just like, observe or participate. Then it's like, oh, this is different from what I imagined it to be.
Yes.
And
that's true in so many areas. I mean, you brought me on one of the visually impaired walks from City Hall, and seeing some of the other folks. I wasn't a blindfolded one because I have stability issues, but seeing some of the other folks who were sighted but blindfolded and given a white cane and a helper, a guide.
Right.
Their first experience was eye-opening for them.
Yes.
It was eye-opening for me, and I wasn't even blindfolded.
Right.
When we first started doing the planters in Worcester, we had a walk around on where they could go and a list of regulations on where it had to be in relation to the street, the sidewalk, the crossing walks, and so on, so that it wasn't in anybody's way, whether it was somebody who was limited to a wheelchair or somebody who wasn't sighted or whatever. And I appreciated that, but I appreciated even so much more when we went on that walk and had the conversation specifically about crosswalks.
Yes.
I found myself parked halfway in a crosswalk the other day, and I made sure to move my car so I wasn't. but it's nice to have that social interaction, whether it's a workshop of plant things or whether it's anything else.
Right. Right. Well, now you're making me think that I'm gonna have to approach Tina about doing a blindfolded workshop for.
That's kind of a cool idea.
Well, again, I digress. I'm going to an art camp tonight, and I'm going to be blindfolding the teen campers to do a project. We're making a bird feeding station, which is composed of edible things that for humans and birds.
Yeah.
And we've done this at an art studio as well, and we blindfolded sighted people. And it's really funny. Like, they don't want to touch anything. They, they don't want to use their hands. And blind people, we're used to we're used to using our hands to, to give us information because our eyes don't give us that information. So it'll be very interesting to hear whether there are giggles or whether there's like, I don't want to touch it. And it's like, it's things that you eat, Yeah. And again, it just, how we as human beings, there were times in our history where we didn't have utensils to eat. We used our hands to eat. And again, it depends upon the culture. And I think that's what you're also referring to. That there's the way we approach the natural world, or the way we approach gardens. It depends upon our exposure to that and what we think it should look like. Just any quick comment about that, because again, when I think of the word garden, or I think of a formal garden, I think of something very very thought out, but I am looking at it, I am not participating in it. And I think that's a turnoff for some people, because you need a lot of money in order to achieve that, or you need to hire a gardener to achieve that. And now, I've completely changed my mind about, I have plants, I can tend plants, and they give me a lot of pleasure, and I don't need, it doesn't cost me a lot of money, and it brings me a lot of pleasure. So
if you have plants on the windowsill, you're a gardener. Right. Everybody's garden is different. There's no definition where somebody's going to compare your garden against a picture standard. It's what you like. And what you like may not be what I like, may not be like what Philip likes. Yeah. But we're each going to be happy with our own garden. And one of the really nice things about gardening is that you can start from seed. For $250, you can start a garden. So you don't have to start with giant expensive plants. You can start with small little inexpensive plants, and they get bigger. There's not too many things that, everybody hopes their investments are going to do that, but I can pretty much guarantee that their plants are going to do that.
Awesome. So Ed, if people are interested in your workshops, where would they go to find these workshops?
The website is bemisfarms.com, BEMISFARMS.com. And we have, there's a link there. That's actually our regular website. Just click on the link. It brings you to the e-commerce site where all the workshops are listed. Our fall workshops are not online yet, but will be shortly. And it is just a wonderful time. We'd love to see people come out.
And I would love to have people get in contact with me about the planters and the hanging baskets here in Worcester. So thank you for bringing beauty to our city.
You're
and
very
have
welcome.
People go out and
Thank
take
you
a
for
peek.
appreciating it.
Thank you. Join me for another edition of Connecting the Dots next time.
Please note that the information provided in this show is not a substitute for consulting with an experienced local attorney and receiving counsel based on the facts and circumstances of a particular transaction. To contact Lizbeth, email her at lizbeth@elizabethlmyska.com or call her office at 508-753-7681. We're online at connectingthedots.lawyer. Executive producers, Lizbeth Myska and Jack Peacock. Producers, John Medberry and Bill Hamilton. A production of Elizabeth L. Myska, J.D., LLM, in association with Compliments.
My wife started acting strange. One side of her face was drooping down.
I knew something was wrong, just didn't know what.
I wasn't exactly sure, but it looked like a stroke.
Even so, you wasted no time calling 911.
I knew you needed an ambulance.
The EMT started treating me right away and notified the hospital.
Call 911 at any sign of stroke. Care starts when the ambulance arrives. First responders and hospitals are working to keep you safe during COVID-19.